One day I want to find someone who sees the world like me.
What's going on, people? Ben and Brittany here from benandbrittany.net, and today we're talking about anxiety and counseling, and I have a confession to make. For the longest time in my life, I didn't think anxiety was a real thing. I thought anxiety was just a made-up term for people to use to not do stuff. Like, I thought anxiety was just, oh, I'm too nervous, I have anxiety. I don't want to do that, I have anxiety. Oh, I just can't, I have anxiety. I thought it was bullshit. I didn't think it was real. And, you know, the farther along I've gotten in my life, the more that I've realized that it is a real thing. So I apologize to anyone out there dealing with anxiety for all the people out there like me that don't respect it, don't treat it for what it is. And I've definitely hopped the fence on those two schools of thought. And we're here to talk about it today. And Brittany suffers from anxiety in many different facets, and I'm just looking at her like she's crazy, you know? I'm just kidding. But yeah,
Well,
tell them about anxiety and counseling, because we've been there, and we know what's going on with the counseling thing and anxiety and how to fix it, and not how to fix it, but how
it's
to...
treatable.
Yeah.
So when we were doing like research for this, I thought it was interesting that about 18% of the American population suffers from anxiety.
That's 40 million people.
Yeah, 40 million people deal with it every year. And it's highly treatable, which we mentioned. I wouldn't say curable, but it's treatable. And yet only 36% of people who suffer from anxiety or other mental disorders like depression, obsessive compulsion disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, all of these things, and only 36% of people are seeking treatment. And I think that's because
of people like me.
Yeah,
that's because of people that make people feel embarrassed about it. So once again, I apologize,
or feel guilty for having it.
Yeah.
I think for me, growing up, like, people would just tell you, like, well, just quit worrying about it.
Or suck it up.
Suck it up, get over it.
Like, man up.
Right. And
that was me.
That was you bully.
I wasn't mean. I never said that stuff to people's face, but that's kind of what I thought. That's what I was thinking for a long time.
And I just think, it's a shame that I feel like maybe if we talk about it and more people realize, maybe I need to seek professional help, then maybe more people will start to get treatment.
For sure. So you did seek for professional help.
Yes, 2 different times.
And I was against it at first.
Yes.
So just to make a long story short here, Brittany and I had been dealing with like the separation of us, like when I go on tour and things, and the anxiety of not being around, not having that extra help. And we fought a couple times because I didn't understand why she was feeling the way that she was feeling. So when we got home, she told me that she really wanted to go talk to somebody. And I was like, no, that's like, it's a waste of money. And she finally convinced me, and we spent the money on it, and she went, and it was one of the better things that we've done. It's definitely worth it. Knowing what I know now, I would have never been against it before.
Sure. So I think, I've been in counseling now for several months, and I had gone through it once before, and the real thing that counseling does is, so anxiety can be caused mainly by 3 issues. One is genetic. A second is a chemical imbalance of the brain or the body, which those 2 forms of anxiety can be treated with both counseling and medication. And then the third is life events. So my anxiety is deeply rooted because of different life events that have occurred in my life. And the way that I like to compare that to people who maybe don't understand is it's kind of like getting a scar. So you used to play football and you have like several scars on your body.
All over my body.
And when you look at the scar, you can tell me a story. Like, you can tell me exactly where you were, what you were doing, what the weather was like that day, how it made you feel, the conversations around that injury. Mm-hmm. You remember a lot. Yeah. From that scar.
I remember my shoulder injury like it was yesterday.
Right. And I think sometimes you could probably even remember the pain that came with that.
Yeah.
That's how life events are for people. It can create scars, and they're just not visible for other people to see. Some are small, some are big, some make you bleed, some make you cry, scars. But they're mental scars. And when certain things happen throughout the course of the day or a week, or like when you were on tour, certain things would happen, and the things that would happen would almost be like a scar reminder. And then I would think back to everything that occurred when the scar first appeared, right? So then I start remembering how I felt, and I start remembering, what was the cause of that scar. And then I start remembering, how I promised myself I would never do said event again, and how I would protect myself in the future from obtaining another scar similar to that.
Yeah, so your walls go up, your red flags, you start seeing them everywhere.
Right. And then you almost start seeing them when they're not really there. So my fear of getting hurt again in similar situations has almost caused me to constantly be on alert.
Yeah.
And I'm just constantly like, was that a red flag? Was that a red flag?
Yeah.
Was that a red flag? And there's times when I can be rational outside of an anxious moment, when my anxiety is at its peak, when I'm just normal, like right now. I can tell you the rational explanations and what's most likely occurring, right? But when my anxiety is increased, it's harder to concentrate on what probably is really happening. And then my mind goes to things like, for example, if Ben doesn't answer his phone and I don't hear from him for a while, like once it starts to get past an hour on tour, I start to get nervous, and my rational thoughts from, he's probably sleeping or he's setting up, start to lead to, okay, this is weird. I haven't heard from him. Normally I would hear from him by now. He's in a ditch on the side of the road. Everybody's injured. No one can call me. Like, these irrational thoughts start to happen, and that's what anxiety looks like. So what counseling does is counseling helps you find the root of your anxiousness. And through several months of therapy, I've been able to pinpoint several events which give me the types of anxiety or OCD or post-traumatic stress disorder that I have. But then it also helps you be like, okay, here's a pinpoint. This is why you feel the way that you feel. Because you feel the way that you feel because of this life event, you now have created this thought process. And counseling helps you retrain your brain to undo that thought process. But here's the thing, is it takes time. People have been dealing with anxiety for years. So a thought process that took years to develop, now it's going to take probably years to undo.
Yeah, they say
that thought process.
They say it takes 66 days to develop a habit. And if you've had anxiety for 10 to 15 years because of certain life events or whatever it may be, like, it's going to take you a little while to undo 15 years of the same thought process. A
lot of practice. And it's hard.
Yep.
When I leave counseling, most of the time I feel super exhausted. Like, kind of like when you go to the gym and you're working out and you leave and your body's like tired and you're sweating. For me, it's kind of like that, except normally there's a lot of crying instead of sweating. But I feel super deflated and mentally exhausted. And I think that's why a lot of people, when they start counseling, they stop. They think that it's this quick Band-Aid and that, 1 or 2 sessions and they should start feeling better. And to be quite honest, the first few sessions, you're just digging and
you're
digging.
Trying to find.
And you're reliving, and you're bringing up pain that you have suppressed because you didn't want to feel it again. So it's hard work, but in the end, it does pay off.
Yeah, and I think we should talk about it from my perspective too.
Absolutely.
Like, from my perspective, being the spouse of somebody who's going to counseling, it has helped so much with communication. That story that Brittany was talking about earlier, where if I'm on tour and I don't answer my phone for an hour, The only reason that didn't happen is because I'm sleeping, I'm setting up, or just I left my phone and something's happening and I just didn't get to my phone yet. Those are the only 3 reasons. Like there's nothing else. And Brittany would think that I was dead, surrounded by women, doing drugs, like something just totally irrational, and that would set me off. Like I would get so mad because I couldn't understand it. I was like, why do you think this of me? Why do you think that I am the scum of the earth because I didn't answer my phone for an hour? I was like, I was sleeping. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear my phone. We would fight. And when I got home, we talked it out, and that's when I was like, no, counseling's stupid. She talked me into it. She went to counseling. She came back, and she was able to better communicate why she felt the way that she felt. And I started to realize that it's not her fault thinking that I'm a terrible person. It's just because of the life that she lived and the things that she went through, her mind goes to certain places a lot easier, and it's not. I guess when her mind was going to those places, I was taking it personally, and that's not good for somebody that just has anxiety. She was able to come home with charts and visuals of like where her mind goes and all this stuff, and I started to understand it, and that is the benefit of counseling for a spouse. The spouse of somebody dealing with it starts to understand their spouse with anxiety a little bit more. Like I said before, I used to think anxiety wasn't a real thing, and now I know that it is, and I understand it. And it's just a total 180 of thought processes for me in the past 3 years. Like there's other people other than Brittany that I know that have started to develop certain aspects of anxiety, and I'm able to understand it and deal with it a lot better than I have in the past because of Brittany's experiences. So I'm all for counseling. We're gonna keep doing it, and it's just the communication lines are very open, much more open than they ever were before as far as that kind of stuff goes.
Yeah, because I think there was a lot of stuff that I never told Ben about, and it wasn't that I was hiding it. It was just something that I didn't like to think about, so I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And then until I went to counseling and I did start talking about it, I didn't realize that those certain life events caused other issues that like Ben has problems with. So like, for example, I really struggle with weight. We did a podcast about self-confidence struggles, and I put a lot of self-pride and self-value on how skinny I am, which is very unhealthy. And, I've come to the realization that, I've been sick a lot less now that I'm at a healthier weight, and I look better.
And that was another thing. Sorry, that was just another thing that I didn't understand at the time, but I understand now.
Right.
Because to put it in perspective, if Brittany was 117 yesterday and woke up 118, like she would be in tears, like minor panicking, and I was like, oh my God, like I don't understand this. Like,
wouldn't want to
how?
eat for the day.
Yeah, she would be like, I'm not eating anything today. She would put her breakfast in the trash can, like all this stuff, and I was just blown away. And like that was like, I was just a couple times I was like, Brittany, like you have got to just stop. Like you can't just wake up and be all in a terrible mood because of 1 pound. Like the human body fluctuates, blah, blah, blah. Like I would start to get mad because I was just like, oh my God, this is the 7th day in a row that this is happening. Mm-hmm. And those like little anger spurts that I have are going away because I understand it now, and I see where she's coming from.
Yeah, because basically those thoughts came from things that occurred in my life where I started to kind of create an untruth. So, for example, let's say there's somebody that I know who's very important in my life, and that person got cheated on, right? And then that person says to me, well, I think it's just because I've gained weight, like I've let myself go. And you kind of see them go through this conflict. And, as you grow up, especially in your teenage years, I think for men and women, but both, I kept seeing certain people kind of battle with weight and feeling that because of their weight, maybe their spouses didn't love them as much or didn't find them attractive anymore. And it created a pattern in my mind. And that pattern created what I call an untruth, meaning it's not true, but in my mind, it is true. And in my mind, it's okay. So if you start to gain weight, people will start to not like you. More specifically, your significant other will start to find you unattractive.
Yeah.
And
in your brain at that time, that is a fact.
Yes.
Like that is so true to you that it is factual.
Right. And actually, like, stepping on the scale for me can be a trigger because I can be rational about my weight right now. Like right now, I'm telling you that I'm at a healthy weight and that it's good that I've gained weight right now because I'm rational.
But if she goes and stands on the scale and sees a number that she doesn't like she reverts right back to that. I don't want to call it depression, but depression.
Right.
That feeling of like you got a weight on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a feeling of failure, oftentimes too. Like, oh, I haven't been working out as much, and then I have this heavy weight of I've failed, and that's definitely a feeling that I go to oftentimes. When things are going on in my life and I feel like I should have been able to control them. And because I couldn't control them, I feel like I failed. And part of my therapy is realizing, when is it really in my control and when is it not? And when it's not in my control, what are the reasonable thoughts to have? One thing too, I always just like to tell people, your feelings are always valid. Right? So whether or not it's true, it is how you feel. Mm-hmm. And it's okay and you should note when you're feeling a certain way. And like I said, your feelings are valid, but it's just making sure that your thought process then can revert back to a rational thought process versus something irrational like Ben dead in a ditch or Ben leaving me because I gained 5 pounds. Those are not things that are
Those
true.
Those are not rational thoughts.
Yeah.
But those are thoughts that you have sometimes. There's even been times where Brittany has those thoughts and she'll call my best friend, Matt Clark, and be like, dude, is this rational? I'm feeling this way. Is this rational? And he'll be like, absolutely not. Thank you, Clark.
Yeah, it's really important when you are going through that. It's really important to have that one or two people in your life that you can call. I don't like to be a negative Nancy, so I hate like telling my friends about all my problems, but there's a very select few who know what I'm going through, including Ben. But like when Ben was on tour, there was just times that I legitimately could not talk to him. Like he was at a show or busy working.
Yeah, with the time difference, I could be going on stage
right
at 5 o'clock in Pennsylvania, and then she wouldn't hear from me for 3 hours, 4 hours.
Right. So, having Clark or one of my other friends be able to call and be like, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking. And Clark has always been the one that can talk me through it. And he reminds me, you're feeling this way because of this. But in reality, Ben loves you and this is what's happening. And it's great if you have someone like that. I think it's really beneficial to your progress. With that said, you should not only rely on friends to get you through difficult times. Your friends will always want to be there for you, but you also don't want to burden them with the weight of every single bad thing that ever happened to you. Like a counselor, A, that's what they get paid to do. Yeah. And B, they're trained to be able to help isolate some of these life events and help retrain that thinking process, and give you suggestions that are probably going to work for you to help you heal. And that's something to remember too. I don't think anxiety is curable. There's depression, there's OCD, there's all these other things that are related to anxiety. And I think that a lot of times people feel like they're broken. And I tend to feel that way too, but really what we have to remember is that we're just in a process of healing. And that process of healing can definitely take time. And sometimes with healing, you get better quicker. Sometimes you might regress a little bit. But counseling is definitely something that can get you on that right track and to heal appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, like the communication lines have been way more open ever since the counseling started. So it's definitely been beneficial to Brittany, but not only that, just Brittany and I's relationship and our understanding of each other's brains. You know?
Yeah.
So counseling is definitely, it's not cheap,
No,
but it is worth it, I think.
My insurance doesn't cover it, which is a whole nother issue. I definitely think the care for mental health in this country is completely broken, but we won't take that route.
Yeah, but you did say something that was quite profound, and I agreed with it. You were like, I don't understand why every little thing that somebody's dealing with can give them what's called mental illness. Like you said something like that. Like when you hurt your knee, like or scrape your knee, you're not injured. You're hurt. There's a difference, right?
Right.
And it's like, it's not mental illness. It's just you have a mental pain that you need to relieve.
Right. And it kind of goes back to like the scar thing. Like I don't really like the term of mental illness just because, I mean, there's definitely more like deeper, like schizophrenia, for example.
Mental
to me,
illness exists.
That is a mental illness. But to me, anxiety, depression, it's just things that we need help with. And I hate categorizing as an illness because then it tends to make you feel, I think,
like you have a disease.
Right. And I think that's why people are like, oh no, I don't have an illness.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
my
fine. Brain is not messed up. I'm not screwed up. I just my dad died and it's rough on me.
I'm just going through a hard time. Right. Yeah. So I feel like it's just not the right category. And I think that's why people might shy from it. It's just, you're bruised.
Yeah.
You're bruised, and there should be no shame in having to talk to someone to help you move past whatever it is that's holding you back. And quite honestly, there was a lot of things that I never realized that had even affected me. But the more I started talking to my counselor and the deeper that we went, that's when she was like, Brittany, like, this is why you are the way that you are. Think about it. And she would kind of lay it out on the table. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh.
You're right.
Yeah, this is why I have issues with, staying skinny. And this is why I put so much value on myself on being skinny.
Yep.
And this is why I think Ben's cheating on me when he's not,
Yeah. So that was a tough one to get over.
Yeah, that was
like,
a hard one.
I was like, oh my God, woman. Like, what? Why do you think this?
Yeah. And, which we're doing a lot better now.
We're definitely okay. My problem with the whole, if I have a little bit of anxiety about something, or like if I'm going through a rough time, the hardest thing in the world for me is to talk about it with anyone. Because I'm just one of those people that I'm just like, okay, everybody that's on this earth has their own problems. They don't want to hear about mine. They don't have time to take on my problems. So I'm just going to hold it all close to my chest and deal with it. And that's where that school of thought is what I think drove me to be like, anxiety is not a real thing. Like, suck it up. Right. Deal with it yourself. Like, stop putting your pressure on other people. Like, just because you have anxiety doesn't mean that you are immune to doing this task. Like, I always thought it was just a form of weakness, and I totally have done a 180 on that thought process.
Which is good.
But yeah, I actually had some conversations with some friends of mine, some people that I'm close to, about how they didn't like that I didn't tell them anything, because it was like they felt like I was not their friend, or not opening up enough to them to make them feel like they were truly my friends, because I wasn't telling them stuff. And then we sat down and had a conversation about a bunch of stuff, and I was just like, guys, I'm sorry, I never thought that me not telling you this was affecting it negatively. I just thought that everybody was busy, everybody had their own lives, and I didn't want to burden you with my problems. Turns out those people did want to know, because that makes them feel like you give a shit about them and you value their opinions and their help and stuff like that.
Well, and I think too, it just also helps them understand your situation better.
Yeah.
Like, they just see you making these decisions and they're like, what the heck is going on? Like, we don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, or why you are the way that you are. And when you admit when you're vulnerable with people, it truly helps them understand you better, especially when it's your friends.
Yeah.
There's something else I wanted to add, and I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, did I ramble on you?
It's okay. What you said was super helpful. I do this.
Don't get anxiety about it.
Oh, I know now. The shaking worked.
Oh,
I
word.
think if you also, like Ben mentioned, like sometimes you would get frustrated with people and they'd be like, oh, I can't do that because it gives me anxiety. If you're at that point and you're realizing that you can't do certain things or that you're afraid to do certain things, that is your red flag that you need to go to counseling. And that is your red flag that there is something internally that's holding you back. And it is treatable and it can take time, but it's just something that you should be looking at that as, I wonder if I should talk to someone about this. And I think what took me so long to go to therapy is I just kept saying, oh, I was fine. I was going through divorce, bankruptcy, and a whole bunch of other drama going on in my life. And people were just like, are you okay? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm the happiest I've ever been, which was true. I was the happiest I had ever been.
On the outside.
And yet, going through those things, I was brushing under the rug my feelings about those things in particular, like the bankruptcy and how it made me feel. I just kept focusing on all the good things going on in my life, which is great, but those good things were kind of just distracting me from being able to deal with the bad things. And now that I have time, and now that I'm realizing that, yes, my life is great, everything is going well, I am the happiest I have ever been, I do still need to kind of go back and talk about some of these hard things that I went through, because now I'm realizing that even though when I was going through it, it didn't bother me then, it is affecting how I make decisions today and how I even parent the girls. Mm-hmm. So...
Yeah. So why is your life so amazing now? Tell him.
He's like, please tell him.
Tell him.
Because of Ben.
Ah, all right. This is the sappiest moment ever on this podcast. I apologize to anybody that just puked. But is there anything else you wanna say to our listeners?
No, I think that's it. I think you just shouldn't be ashamed, and that you should seek help, and that it's worth every penny.
And I apologize for all the assholes out there that don't think that anxiety is a real thing and treat you negatively for it. I was one of those people, no longer am. Sorry, guys. For real, though, if there's anything we can do to help you in whatever situations that you guys are in right now, whatever it may be, feel free to get in contact with us at benandbrittany.net. You can even text Ben and Brittany to 717-422-8318, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. That is our number, and we will text you right back. Thank you guys for listening and all your continued support. Drop a comment below and tell us about anything that you're going through or any kind of anxiety things, or just weigh in on this topic in general. Comments mean a lot to us. They help our message get out there a little farther. So appreciate the support, guys, and we will see you in the next podcast.
Yeah.
All right.